Have you ever watched ESPN Sports Center or something that streams, sports services, and they say, oh, this player has torn their ACL and may be out, but never thought and looked back into the severities? Well, today we're going to be talking about NFL and the severity to its injuries. Our research question is, since the early 2000s, what extent has the influence on society affected the way people see NFL injuries and the rehab to it? First, in the ACL category, you see preseason, regular season, and preseason plus regular season, so both of them added up. And if you look, in 2015, there was only 29 in the preseason, 30 in the regular season, 59 in total. But then 2016, it stays relatively about the same number, little less, little more. And then 2018, it goes down to 54, and then so on and so forth. But as you can see, in 2020, the COVID year, it has a drastic amount of just plummet. And then you get to 2021, when all the players came back and opted back in, you see it rises up to 71, which is the highest it's been since 2015. For MCL, as you can see, according to the charts on the total from postseason and regular season, you see it's a lot more than ACL, which makes it easier to tear, but it could also be a more severe injury. Even if you look, in 2015, it's 160, which is the highest it's ever been, but it also drops down to nearly almost out of the 100 range, down in 2019. Even in 2020, the COVID years when players did opt out, you can see that it still stays relatively about the same, maybe a little less, a little higher. Even for concussions do play a big factor into getting mental disorders and mental health problems like CTE. As you can see, concussions have dropped down in 2021, but were also at their highest in 2017 at 281 for the preseason plus postseason and regular season.
Now use the clicker.
Okay. Claim 2, mental health. As you can see, according to the chart done, 99% of the patients studied with CTE came from the NFL. And as you go higher up in the pro league, you can see at high school it's 21%, semi-professional 64%, Canadian Football League or the CFL is at 88%, and then college athletes, which is 91%, ranking 48 out of 53 athletes that were surveyed to have CTE. Even the CTE symptoms, you see the cognitive symptoms, memory, which could contribute to memory loss, is at the highest at 86%, but behavioral and mood, you can see depressive and explosivity are at 51 and 59, and impulsivity is at 88, which is drastically higher than depressive and explosive. And then for dementia, it's the only one in its category. All dementias is 72%. And then motor difficulties like gait instability, slowliness, and coordination have ranked in from coordination being at 41%, slowliness being at 42%, and gait instability at 56%, with all motor difficulties at 68%. Aaron Hernandez was a stellar football tight end, but his career cut short when he murdered someone and was imprisoned and later found out that he had CTE. If you look at the picture in the bottom right, this is a 27-year-old's regular brain, which would be if there was no CTE, which CTE is parts of the brain deteriorated and dying. But if you look at Aaron Hernandez's brain scan, you can see in the middle there is a giant hole, which would be caused from all the concussions and hits he took with his head. And he later hung himself in prison in 2013, serving a life sentence for Oyden Lloyd. Luke Kuechly, a stellar linebacker, cut his career short though because of the amount of concussions and hits he was taking to the head. Stellar, all-pro, played in a Super Bowl, and eventually after the game with the Eagles, that was his last game he played. In this picture, this influences on how society could view them, with everyone forming the same opinion and one person having one opinion, which is also called group thinking and group influence. Johnny Knox was another stellar football player, but his career was cut short with getting hit in the pass over the middle, being overthrown, and it was later a career-ending injury. He still walks with a limp, but can never stand comfortably due to the injury. Alex Smith, another stellar quarterback for the Washington Redskins, which was now the Commanders. He was playing in the game, came down, fractured his leg, tore his ACL, and later found out he had to have 17 surgeries due to the complications of the flesh-eating bacteria in his leg. Almost had to get amputated, and they brought in military doctors that performed on survivors from IEDs to operate on his leg. He later did play in games in the 2020 season and shortly retired after due to health reasons. Derek Stingley, very old football player, but was paralyzed due to Jack Tatum hitting him in the spinal cord, affecting his spinal cord, and that later affected his life and causing him to come short at dying just in the 50s of his life. His grandson, Derek Stingley Jr., is now a prospect for the first round in a 2022 draft out of LSU. We're excited, Paige. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
2 questions for you.
Yes.
Where are they? They're there. How valid and reliable were the sources that you used, and then how do you know they were?
Going through the sources, I tried to pick the best ones that seemed the most reliable by obviously them not being blogs and by doctors and other professionals in the field that they were specialized in, like neurologists and physiologists and other stuff that really discovered the body and the symptoms of CTE, ACL, MCL, and also the charts for the first claim were straight from the NFL with the injury reports.
All right, and if you had more time, what additional research would you have conducted on this issue?
I definitely would have touched more into CTE just because I think a lot of the people now do think it's kind of just like only sides to being aggressive and all these other traits, but it's more or less you could have CTE and not know about it. Like Aaron Hernandez, for example, he had CTE, but the only way to find out if you had CTE is for you to pass away, obviously.